What's up, everyone? Kevin Allen here, aka the Geek from DFS Army, and this is your NFL Week 7 Draftkings first look lineup. I'm rocking the Draftkings swag. I'm excited to check out the salaries, the game environments, and all that good stuff. Looking at Draftkings NFL Week 17, and as always, before we dive into setting up a lineup and looking at all of that, let's take a look at the games and get a sense of what's going on for the week. So right here, I've got the Sharp app game screen up with all of our cards, and we're just going to take a look at some of these totals, spreads, and see which games look like really good targets for NFL Week 7. And it starts with a game here. We got the Bucs heading out to Carolina. What's wrong with Tom Brady? I mean, I think I know what's wrong, but what's up with Brady? Not looking so good. But the Bucs are 11-point favorites in this spot against the Carolina team. I don't know. Sam Darnold going to be the quarterback this one? I have no idea who they're trotting out at the quarterback position at this point, but it's pretty ugly in Carolina. 11-point spread for Tampa. Can't really trust Brady. I mean, it's hard to trust Brady outside of tournaments at this point. It's been shit. So I think it's a Leonard Fournette situation, and I love Fournette in this spot. Next game on the docket, we've got the Bengals at home taking on the Falcons. The Falcons keeping games close. Got to give them a lot of props. Probably a slightly better team than what we thought coming into the season. Interesting side note, the Falcons have covered the spread every single week, and they probably will again here this week, given that they're +6. With all that being said, Joe Burrow had the big week last week. It's a 47-point total. This is a lot of points on the board here for Cincinnati. So I think we go right back to Burrow in the spot and one of the higher projected games on the slate. Here's a game between the Lions and Dallas. And I have to say, it's got a 48-point total. Dallas is at home. Will he, won't he? Is this the return of Dak? He's coming off injury. I don't know. If Dak played, I'd be very interested in a game like this because Detroit is one of those defenses that you want to target with opposing offenses. But Dak is coming off injury. Can we really trust him? I don't know. And then if we don't want to, if Dak isn't the guy and it's Cooper Rush, can we really play any of the offensive pieces from Dallas? On the flip side, Detroit is up against Dallas defense. Dallas defense is a very good defense. So I don't know. That game's interesting. Dallas has one elite cornerback sort of in Trey Diggs. And, could he negate Amon-Ra? Is this a spot for Swift? So this is a tricky game, I think, to target because Dallas defense is really good, and we don't know what's going on. Detroit defense is bad, but we don't know what's going on with Dak right now, and I'm hesitant to kind of use him as a core piece on his first game back from injury. Here's one, Giants at Jaguars, 42-point total. Pretty gross total here. Certainly some pieces would be in play from the Giants just because they're so cheap, like their wide receivers and whatnot, but Darius Slayton kind of let us down last week. Wan'Dale Robinson, they're all in the mid 4K range. They're going to have to be in the mix this week. I've already gone through the salaries, and there isn't a whole lot of bargain basement pricing going on. Here's another similar game with the Titans at home taking on the Colts. See another low 42.5-point total. No, not a game that stands out as something we want to be targeting heavily, but of course, Derrick Henry is involved. The Titans don't have much going on catching passes, so they need Derrick Henry to do most of the scoring for them. Colts side, let's see if Jonathan Taylor comes back for this one. He could be interesting, and of course, Michael Pittman and Alec Pierce are playable, but again, they don't stand out in that spot. In an even worse game here, it gets pretty gross in terms of the totals till we get to the really just the whole slate, except for really one game, which surpasses 50, which we're getting to. But here we got the Packers at Washington, Commanders at home, 5.5-point underdogs. Again, don't know what's going on at quarterback for the Commanders with Wentz likely out. And it's going to be one of Heineke or the rookie. I think Packers defense is in play if they trot the rookie out there. If it's Heineke, he just was not able to get a whole lot done last season. But I do think he's a competent quarterback. So I don't know. Not much to like on either of these teams, if I'm being honest. Yeah, I don't like anything about that game. 41-point total. I think we can stay away. A more interesting game here. We've got Cleveland at Baltimore. Cleveland's a very bad run defense, and Baltimore likes to run the football with their quarterback and with their running backs. Last week, Kenyon Drake had a big game. And if J.K. Dobbins is out this week, I'm actually interested in Kenyon Drake as a standalone play. Obviously, every single week, Mark Andrews is in play. He just seems to be incredibly consistent. And Lamar Jackson brings 40-point upside and, and a floor of about 15 fantasy points every single week. He's got a massive GPP-only kind of range of outcomes. But there's no Josh Allen on the slate, so, hey, why not? Cleveland side, it's just those running backs. I think Cleveland's going to be chasing a little bit here, so maybe we can be interested in Njoku and Amari Cooper. But their entire offense is Njoku, Cooper, and the running backs. So at least it's concentrated. They don't need to score a lot for those guys to get where they need to go. Jets at Denver, really gross game. I like Jets defense in this one. Denver not playing well. They're just terrible. They suck. Let's be real. This is exactly the kind of game the Jets are going to win. So I like this game. I like this game for the Jets. I like to bet the Jets in this spot. Their running game should be able to get it done. And even with the very, very low 39.5 point total, I think like a Breece Hall and Jets defense are playable. That's about it, though. Here's an interesting one between Houston and Las Vegas, where the Raiders are home as 7-point favorites. And one of the interesting thoughts that I have is just like, man, Josh Jacobs has been spectacular the last few weeks. And, just 30-plus touches a game. The volume is crazy. If that continues, he's going to smash. This is a spot to play running backs against Houston. So to me, Josh Jacobs, as weird as this sounds, and listen, we'll check ownerships later in the week. If he's chalk, then I'll have some concerns, and he might get to be very chalky. I don't know, but for now, Josh Jacobs looks like a spectacular play in this game. I don't mind the other pieces on the Raiders either. Devontae. I don't like the other guys, but Devontae Adams is mildly interesting as well here. And on the Houston side, yeah, we haven't seen them in a minute coming off the bye week, but the usual suspects. It's not the best spot for them, but Dameon Pierce and of course Brandon Cooks are the usual suspects. Should be in play in a game like this. Here's one of my favorites of the slate. We got Seattle at LA to take on the Chargers, with the Chargers coming in as 6.5-point home favorites and a 51-point total. This is by far the highest game total on the slate, and this is a game we want to consider building around. With the Chargers coming in as heavy home favorites, they'll have the highest projected team total on the slate as well. One thing I like about the Chargers in this spot is, again, assuming Keenan Allen remains out, which he's been forever, then we could go right back to Palmer and Mike Williams in the passing game, and of course, Austin Eckler as a running back. I like everything about it. The Seattle side as well. Geno and those pass catchers coming off a rough outing for fantasy purposes. A little bit of that is because they ceded a lot of their work to Kenny Walker, who I love in this spot, even as an underdog. Kenny Walker, fresh legs, young, no competition against a Chargers defense that's not very good at stopping the run. And of course, I think one of the two pass catchers for Seattle probably has a good game here. I don't know if it's going to be Lockett or Metcalf, but they're both of interest. Last game on the main slate is this Chiefs-San Francisco game. And again, an interesting one because the Chiefs are going up against a good defense. But Pat Mahomes is good enough to beat a good defense almost most of the time. Pat Mahomes put up a nice number, not a slate-breaking number last week, but a nice number against the Bills last week. And that's what I'd expect again here. I think more, like a 25-26 Adam Mahomes, probably not enough to win you a tournament, but he's definitely in the mix for me. 48-point total, good team total, just over 25 fantasy points. The 49ers side is really interesting for me as well because they're going to be chasing points against the Chiefs. So, that brings the guys who aren't always in play, the Kittles and Deebo Samuels, who need sort of a high-scoring, action-packed game into play. And I think that happens in this spot. So, with that being all said, let's take a look at DraftKings and go through the positions one by one. And of course, we already talked about a lot of these names, but I'll reiterate some of this. So obviously, Lamar Jackson, always a good spot. He's at home. Lamar Jackson does his best scoring in games where his team is actually heavily favored. And they aren't heavily favored here. They're 6.5 though, and over 3.5. Those are some of Lamar Jackson's best games. So I saw a stat last week that showed that like Lamar Jackson is more than a 4-point favorite. Averages 28 fantasy points per game. Of course, he was a 5-point favorite last week. Only scored 18, but they lost. They got to win. They got to win. So being favored doesn't matter. They lost the game. It's when they win and win big, Lamar Jackson goes crazy. As you can see here by these games, the 37-pointer. Again, they were heavy favored against Miami. That's where they put up the big numbers. So Mahomes is definitely of interest. Herbert is very much of interest here against Seattle. And I'm going to continue with my narrative that games against Seattle score well. So I think Herbert is going to be one of my top choices. I'm actually going to plug him in here. And one of the things that I've noticed in constructing lineups already this week is that there's no value to be had. For the most part, value is hard to come by. And what that means is it's really, really difficult to have payups, even at the quarterback position. You almost want to be middling across the board. And that is what happens on DraftKings as we get to the heart of the season. We're starting to get a sense of these players. So there aren't as many value plays popping up without an injury or something. And we don't really have that injury replacement situation going into the week, not like last week. So the value plays are fewer and further between. So paying down at quarterback is really, really beneficial this week. But we really have to figure out who that pay down quarterback is that we can trust. So continuing through the list, yeah, Joe Burrow's in a good spot at home. 6,900. He's coming off the big game. I'm sure the ownership will be elevated. He hasn't had a lot of good games this season where it's like, hey, I wish I played him. He peaked at about 26 before this 35-pointer this past week. So is Joey Swag getting the swag back? Maybe. And I don't mind him in this spot, but obviously paying 6,900 for Burrow, he needs to smash to pay off for that. And I think he has a harder time, quote unquote, smashing compared to some of the other quarterbacks in the range. Dak Prescott, still not sure if he's going to play. Even if he does, it's a little scary to play him coming off injury, but I'll have him in tournaments, but I don't think, it's a safe approach. Tom Brady, there's something wrong. There's something off about Tom. He is just not the guy that he's been. Look at the quarterback rating, 87. I mean, these are low numbers for Brady. He's traditionally like a 95 to 100 plus QBR kind of quarterback. He's missing open receivers. I still think it's going to turn around, but man, that game was ugly. And where are the big games from T-Braid? I think it's coming. I really do. And I like him again in the spot. I just, they could lean on the run. Carolina isn't likely to put up much resistance, so they could style, but I don't trust it. Derek Carr is not somebody I usually play. I mean, I effectively ignored Russell Wilson. I effectively ignored Aaron Rodgers. Just not interested. Derek Carr. Oh, wow. I turned off my camera, but forgot to mute. So sorry about the sneeze. Excuse me. But Derek Carr, not that interesting. Never puts up a big number. 23 peak of the season. I don't play guys like that. Jared Goff, same deal. He's had a couple good games. I think he's a tournament viable play, but not somebody I'm excited about taking on Dallas. Lawrence, again, coming off a good week. So just looking at the cheap zone here, coming off a decent week last week. I guess he could be in the mix, but again, it's a low total game, not super exciting. Geno Smith here against the Chargers could be interesting. So if we want to pay down, I tried it last week. It didn't really work, but Geno Smith could be interesting as a pay down option. I'm just not chasing last week's pay down that didn't work. And I think that I'm concerned with Geno now that Kenny Walker, an elite running back, is there, that we might lose some of his potential upside. Beyond that, I'm not a Jimmy G guy most weeks, but my goodness, this could be the chance. So in tournaments against KC, maybe a little Garoppolo. Not going to go back to Matt Ryan. This guy is rare that he gets 2 good games in a row going. So it doesn't look very promising. Sam Darnold, not exciting here. So I'm going to stick with Herbert here in this one. But there are some plays down here that we're going to have to take chances on in large field tournaments. All right, talking about the running back position. So I've already gone through this slate, as I said. And for the most part, you cannot afford to pay up at running back. You can't have luxury running backs because there's not much affordability on the slate to allow for it. So I'm going to look for a couple of middling salary. I think the sweet spot this week, and just going through the top guys. Yeah, I love Derrick Henry. Sure. I like Jonathan Taylor. I don't mind Barkley at this price. I love Fournette at this price. I'm off on Jones. I'm kind of off on Mixon. Mixon's all right at 7K, but actually I think he's in the mix. Swift, kind of just in the mix for me at 6,800, but he's coming down to the zone of usability. So I think these 7K guys, they're a little bit luxurious. That's the best way I could describe them, because you'll see as we put the lineup together, there's just not enough salary left to kind of do that. There's not enough savings at wide receiver to pay up at running back, but I like them. I love Fournette. I love Barkley. Not into Jones here. Not enough volume for me compared to these other guys and compared to some of the cheaper guys. He's just not a good value at all. Joe Mixon is fine. Let's be aware, sometimes the volume drops significantly, and even in that big scoring game last week, of course, they were against a good rush defense, but it was concerning. Swift, again, against a good defense. Not my favorite scenario. But here we are, Josh Jacobs. And take a look at his game logs. 21 carries, 5 targets. 28 carries, 6 targets. 33 and 37 fantasy points. Now, I don't know if I can count on the multiple touchdown game, but I don't even need it at 6,500. This is such a good matchup. Everything stands out for Josh Jacobs here in the spot against the Texans. So I'm plugging him in. And there's a couple of other running backs that I really love in this zone. So many of them. Really, this is where we're going to live this week. Dameon Pierce, fine. Breece Hall, fantastic. Low scoring game, but still very in play. And down here, we've got my boy, Kenny Walker Jr. Again, elite situation against the worst rush defense in the league. That's my guy this week. I'm plugging Kenny Walker Jr. in along with Josh Jacobs, and it gives us 2 middling priced running backs to go along with what is a fairly expensive quarterback. Now, if I'm playing Justin Herbert, I want one of his pass catchers with him, either Mike Williams or Palmer. And I'm going to go Williams here, assuming that Keenan Allen will be out again this week. If Keenan Allen plays, I am off of Mike Williams outside of massive GPPs, but Williams becomes a fairly safe play and our one luxurious pay-up option at wide receiver if Keenan Allen is out. I like that pairing. Palmer did okay as well in this past game, and he's looked fine. He's gotten a lot of air yards. He's got a lot of targets, 12 targets this past week, only 14 fantasy points, but 12 targets. So the elevated targets look good. And I don't mind Palmer as the pairing with Herbert as well if we want to go a little bit cheaper there. I'm going to jump over to defense real quick, because this is where we start to get a sense of how much salary we have left for the rest of these spots. And I like to plug in the defense just to get that sense. And I start at the bottom. I go bottom up on defense. So Seahawks at the Chargers, not into that. Panthers at Tampa, not into that. Texans at Vegas, not into that on the road. Lions at Dallas, not into. Atlanta at Cincy, that's a no. Cleveland, Baltimore, that's a no. Commanders, Packers. Now, Jets just tore up the Packers, but I'm not counting on that again. What I do like is Jets defense here going up against Denver. I don't like road defenses generally, but Denver stinks. And they're just so bad. They're so dusty at running back. They've got no one that scares you. Russ Wilson is fat. He's slow. He doesn't see the field. I don't know what the fuck happened to Russell Wilson. Maybe he'll turn around at some point, but this guy is not the guy that I was a fan of for the last 10 years. I don't know who this guy is. He's weird. He does weird commercials. I can't take it. And the Jets defense is looking legit. They just owned the Packers. They're getting better. The front line's getting better. Going to get some sacks here. Could get a turnover. I love Jets defense. I love them anyway, but they're also the cheapest viable defense. So double delight on Jets defense this week. I'm also going to go tight end, and I'm going to go through this here again before we get to the final spot, so we have an idea of what's going on at tight end this week. And it's a very, very slim position. Not too many choices. Of course, at the top we've got Kelsey and Andrews, all great. Love them both, but it's going to be hard to afford to pay up for a luxury tight end this week without any sort of value popping out. Later in the week, value may pop up, but as of right now, and it is Tuesday, this is the first look. I haven't seen much value. I haven't gotten, Wednesday we might get an injury report, somebody out, somebody will pop. But as of now, that value doesn't exist. So I'm trying to build middling salary type lineups here and talk about players that will fit. So Kelsey and Andrews, I love them both. Probably won't fit in this build. but they could work with a cheap quarterback build, or if we do some luxury, find some bargains, either at running back or wide receiver as the week rolls on. Yeah, Darren Waller's just not for me. He's just not doing it. He's not doing it. The volume isn't there. 5 targets, 8 targets. This is not good enough for his salary. I'm not paying it. Hawkinson, not a great spot. I think Amon-Ra comes back, not paying it. Kyle Pitts is murdering your lineups. Don't play Pitts. Why are you doing that? What is he doing that justifies? I mean, they finally have him priced right. That's the best thing about Pitts. He was priced in 5K, and I kept saying, why are you guys? He does nothing. Now he's down in the 4s. So, all right, at least he's priced right. One guy I do like at tight end is David Njoku. Middling cut of salary, but this guy is heavily involved in his team's offense. 6 targets, 7, 10, and 5. 5 or 6 targets at 42. That's just a good value with occasional spikes, and he's an athletic tight end that gets a little yak going. He hasn't had the touchdowns. That's why the scores don't look as great, but you add a touchdown to any of these scores. I mean, this is the version with a touchdown. It gets you 20. The other ones, 4, 8, 12, 16, we need to get to about 16 fantasy points for Njoku to make value. And I mean, he's there, 2 out of the 5. So he gets there, right? 4, 8, 12, 16 with the occasional 20 or 24. That's a 6 or 7X. So I like Njoku. I'm going to plug him in, but I've got an even sneakier cheap tight end, but I want to mention a few of these other guys. Robert Tonyan, massive 12 targets last week, 19 fantasy points. He's on the radar. Gerald Everett, kind of come down. He's a little bit all over the place. I'm not sure I can trust his floor, but Dalton Schultz, if he gets healthy and it's Dak, then I think we can go right back to Dalton Schultz. His price is right at 3,600. That is a guy I'm interested in. And I'm actually going to pull Njoku out of this lineup, and I'm going to plug in my cheapest viable here, which we'll get to in a second. Hayden Hurst has been all right. Nothing I'm excited about. Evan Ingram, same deal. Probably not much upside there, although probably decent floor, but not much upside. But one guy who I kind of like, Cameron Brate was carted off the field, and I do not expect him to play for the Bucs this week, which brings back my boy, Cade Otton, the rookie. Otton, 7 targets in the week that he started for 10 fantasy points. Got a couple targets replacing Cameron Brate this past week in the game, and I think he's live for 6 or 7 targets most weeks. So if we need to pay all the way down and get rid of Njoku, we can get a cheap $2,700 tight end that's probably going to get 4 or 5, maybe even the same number of targets, even if he doesn't have the explosive upside of a David Njoku. We could save some salary and do some things. So plugging in the cheapest possible tight end leaves us with 6K left remaining per player in this lineup. So let's continue. And actually, let's just straight up talk wide receivers. All right, we got to be in the 6K zone, but we'll go through the whole group for the most part, or we'll try to go through all of them with some commentary. So, of course, Devontae Adams is a good spot. Always happy to play him at 8,700. But, it is noteworthy that the volume, it's been all right. 3 receptions, 30 fantasy points is not going to happen every time, though. Got that bomb last week. But I do like Devontae Adams here. Jamar Chase broke out last week. We loved Chase last week, and it worked out really, really well. He was a guy who was pushing all throughout the week. It looked like I thought T. Higgins was going to be hurt. He wasn't even hurt, but it still worked out nicely for Chase, and the breakout is on. I think he's going to do great. Deebo Samuel is exactly the kind of wide receiver we want in a spot like this. San Francisco probably going to be behind and chasing KC. They're not going to be able to sit back on the run. They're going to have to throw it a lot. And Deebo is one of those guys that he puts up touchdowns. He's a solid player. Michael Pittman last week, 16 targets, monster day. I like him here too. Tennessee, really, really weak against wide receivers. They're definitely a team to exploit. So I like all of these pay-ups. The only issue is, can we afford it? Amon-Ra, sure, he'll be back. Should be healthy. Great. Mike Evans, again, I'm worried about. This is just a stack with Brady situation for me. I'm definitely worried about the whole Brady thing. CeeDee Lamb could be great as well if Dak Prescott was playing. I don't really like CeeDee Lamb that much with Cooper Rush under the helm, but he's, all right. Metcalf, nice pairing with this game, the Herbert Seattle game. But my issue with Metcalf is primarily that he doesn't do more than Tyler Lockett, and DraftKings has Tyler Lockett priced down. I'm actually going to plug in Tyler Lockett in this lineup to get the correlation with Herbert. That's the way I'm probably going to go. But I mean, T. Higgins, fine, 6,400. Godwin, also fine at 63. Love Godwin. Cortland Sutton, I'm less interested in. Denver stinks, and I just don't trust Russell Wilson. I'd rather play wide receivers connected to better quarterbacks. And with that being said, even though I just said that, Amari Cooper I think is interesting as well, because he's such a focal point of that offense. Lazard playable, Christian Kirk playable. So a lot of no McLaurin for me, but I'm going to plug in Tyler Lockett as my second wide receiver, just because we get that correlation with Herbert and Williams, and we get a little Walker Seattle kind of combo, and I think that's enough from that one game. One thing I've noted in my research for this week is it gets really gross at wide receiver once we go past Tyler Lockett. I like Brandon Ayuk. I didn't mention that, but I think they're going to have to throw to him. He looked great last week. Big game for Ayuk last week, 11 targets. I could see more of that happening. But as far as wide receiver, it gets really, really gross, and we won't need to go very far below the 6K range, but I kind of want to talk about it a little bit before we go and finish this up, because we might want to get a running back here in the flex. But as we look down through the rest of the salaries here, Jerry Jeudy's a no. Smith-Schuster, I don't think he can do what he did last week. Bobby Trees, no thank you. London, again, price still too high for the fact, just 5 or 6 targets. Boyd, never somebody I want to play. When you look at Boyd, he had his best game last week. Like, he was so involved, 6 targets, still didn't do anything. So I'm not excited about Boyd at all. Just the role he plays on that team just doesn't do it. Very similar to Curtis Samuel, who I was hoping would become a cheat code for us with all the usage that he gets, but he needs to score touchdowns. There's no upside there, or there wasn't with Wentz. Let's see what happens with this new QB, but I don't trust it. Continuing down the list, Romeo Dobbs is fine. Palmer is fine here at 5K. I wouldn't mind if we had to, if we wanted to sort of make a different approach to the lineup, I might put in Palmer and take out Williams and do something a little different. So that would open up some salary things for us. But I do prefer Williams, so I want to stick with him. But certainly Williams is in a zone here where I have a lot of wide receivers that I also like, whereas Palmer at 5K is really in a spot where I don't like many of the wide receivers in that zone. Let's see who the quarterback is for Carolina. But I will say with DJ Moore that he did pretty good with Darnold under the helm for a few games last year. So do with that what you will. I don't know if I can go there. In the sub 5K range, there's only a couple of what I consider to be viable plays. I think Alec Pierce is one of them. Devin Duvernay is another. Alec Pierce being WR2 for the Colts. Duvernay did fine when Bateman was playing. He had a bad week last week, but whatever, that's going to happen. They spread the ball around a lot in Baltimore, but I think Duvernay is still playable here, I guess. Wan'Dale Robinson also probably at least somewhat playable. He definitely looks a little bit better than Slayton, but it's risky at 45. He's priced up. It's not a good price. Beyond that, maybe Zay Jones at 4,400. We know he gets targets most weeks, 5 targets last week, 8 the week before. So I think at 4,400, Zay Jones is interesting. I know I talk about him all the time, and he hasn't had a lot of big games, but it is what it is. And beyond this point, where we're left with basically nothing. So this is what I'm saying. When you look at the way the salaries come together this week, there's really not much going on between 4 and 5K at wide receiver, and it gets even worse beyond that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually turn this into a double stack, right? Because it just works for me salary-wise. And I'm not a big double stacker this season, but screw it. Let's double stack it. Palmer and Williams with the bring back of Lockett and Kenny Walker for the big game stack built around Seattle at the Chargers. We get Josh Jacobs in there, and with $7,200 left, we have a lot of choices of what we want to do. I actually kind of don't love, I would like to, let's see, 7,200. Let me see what I can do here. So this opens up getting to a slightly better tight end. Let's see if we can squeeze Njoku in here. No, No, it didn't work. No, it leaves us with garbage. It leaves us with garbage. That didn't work. The problem is between Njoku for me and Otten, there isn't really a spot here where you want to double stack it. No, that's crazy. There isn't really a spot here where, you know what? I say let's just plug in Amon-Ra. He's been great. He's been great all season. Let's just plug in Amon-Ra. So there we have it. So one thing I was thinking about doing, though, was I was thinking about, all right, if I took out Lockett and I put in Metcalf, then I can kind of have two maybe like middling guys. So let's say we took out Lockett and we put in Metcalf, who is a worse value, I think. But what happens is it gets me 6,400, which actually leaves me in a spot that I like a little bit more. So if I don't want to do the Amon-Ra version, I go Metcalf, and then I can get a running back in here for the last spot. So like I can get Breece Hall in there, who I like, or Dameon Pierce, or even T. Higgins. So I like this version a little bit better, and we'll make this the official version. I'm going to plug in Breece Hall to the last spot because they correlate with Jets defense Hall. So look at all the correlation here. We got Herbert. We've got Game Stack with Seattle, pieces of Walker and Metcalf. We got QB stack with both Williams and Palmer. Remember, this does not work if Keenan Allen plays. Let's hope he doesn't. We got Josh Jacobs, who is just in a smash situation. 33 and 37, similar situation. Then we've got Cade Otton, supreme value tight end, assuming that Cameron Braid is out, and of course, Breece Hall to the New York Jets. That is your DraftKings first look for NFL Week 7. Guys, it's the very end, but I saved the best for last. NBA kicks off this week, and DFS Army has got you covered. Promo code KICKOFF. We're giving our biggest discount ever across everything that we do. Core, VIP, Core 4, just the NBA only. Whichever subscription you want. Our VIP, $69.99. It's 20% off, and that locks in. We never do that. 20% off with promo code KICKOFF. You could do it for the Core 4 Sports, which I believe is $49.99. 20% off. You get NBA, NFL, MLB, just the Core Sports, or NBA only. Whatever you do, 20% off 1 week only over at DFS Army. Go to dfsarmy.com. Sign up with the promo code TIPOFF. Promo code TIPOFF gets you 20% off at DFS Army. And of course, leave your comments. Who do you like this week? Who stands out to you? NFL Week 7 early look. Which players are you kind of targeting? Which running backs? Which wide receivers? Have you found a bargain wide receiver that I couldn't think of? Let me know in the comment section below. Good luck this week, everybody. I'll see you next time.